Hi, Alan Arkish with more music and stories. The music? Well, that's Jimi Hendrix, The Wind Cries Mary. And there'll be a lot of stories because this is the story of the Summer of Love, Part 2. The summer where I got to introduce to Jimi Hendrix's music. And a summer for me that was full of transitions. It was a very important time in my life because I was transferring from Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania to my dream school, NYU. I was going to go to the film school, and it took me 3 years. I was 19 years old, and I wanted to go there since I was in 11th grade. And I finally convinced my parents, and everything fell together. And now I was spending the summer at home in Fort Lee, New Jersey, and every day I go into New York because I had to find an apartment. That was the first thing. I didn't want to live in a dorm, and luckily for me, someone from Franklin and Marshall College had also transferred to the film school. His name was Jeff Greenberg, and Jeff and I were going to find an apartment together in the Village. That was our dream, but in order to accomplish that, there was another reason I had to travel into New York City. That was to have a job, to earn some money. And I worked for my dad as a runner and delivered packages all over Manhattan. Spent a lot of time talking to him, mostly about how much he didn't like my mother. And I was living with my mother in Fort Lee at night. So I was caught between the two of them because they were getting divorced. So it was like living with your head in a vice. But there was one antidote to all this sort of emotional turmoil and pain, and that was my best friends. They were all home for the summer. Right here, we've got Eddie Cohn, who had gone to Rutgers and was doing great and was studying oceanography and computer science. Very early computer science, but Eddie was the first scientist to track the fish in the ocean with computer programs. He's a very, very smart guy. And that's my other close friend, Dennis Benson, who went to Rutgers, and they were roommates. And Dennis eventually became the dean of Rutgers Film School. And there is our third friend, Teddy Cohn. Now, Teddy had to be asked to leave Wisconsin a little bit early. You see, like all of us, the number 4 thing we wanted to have happen that summer was fun. But at University of Wisconsin, Ted had too much fun, and the school wanted him to have less fun. So they said, come back when you're ready. And so Ted spent the summer working at the New York Stock Exchange, and he got me a job there. But every night we went to Ted's bathroom, and we spent our summer in Ted's bathroom. Why Ted's bathroom? Because Ted had a record player that looked like this, and it played mono. And in that tiled bathroom, music like this Hendrix album sounded fantastic as it ricocheted off the tile, especially when you put the record player in the tub. Now, preceding that, we'd go out on his balcony and partake of the new lifestyle. We smoked pot. Let's talk a little bit about Hendrix because it's clear I care a lot about his music. As you can hear, this kind of music was unlike anything else that came out in that summer. It's full of really interesting textures, beautiful guitar sounds. He was a virtuoso on the guitar. And sadly, he only lived long enough to make 3 records. The first, the one you were just listening to, was his first album, and one of the greatest first albums ever, Are You Experienced? And he followed that up pretty quickly with Axis Bold as Love, which is a good record. I mean, not quite as great as that one, but it has Spanish Castle Magic on it, and If Six Were Nine, and lots of great things. He was really into sound textures. And he pursued that by buying his own recording studio and naming it Electric Ladyland. And this is the album that came out of it. This is the first album from Electric Ladyland, and it's called that. It was on A Street, and a double record in which he experimented with all kinds of sound. Because like the Beatles, who dominated that summer as well with their music, he was looking for something beyond the textures of music of regular rock and roll. And rock and roll was forever changed because of these two. Now, I really like this cover, but it's not the original cover. The original cover lasted in the stores about 2 weeks before it was pulled, and thank God, because in the world of shitty rock and roll covers, this one is one of the champs. I mean, this is so, what's the word, inappropriate, and I'm sure glad that it didn't come out today. Now, even though Jimmy made only 3 records, his output, he was working on his 4th record when he died from, I think he choked on his vomit, taking pills, some horrible rock and roll death at 27 years old. But this is his output. You see, in death, Jimmy made a lot more music than he did in life because he was so prolific and he played so much stuff in his studio that was all recorded by a terrific engineer by the name of Eddie Kramer that they had enough material for years. Just this stack alone is all the studio recordings that they are able to pull from what he had done before he died. And many of them are just fragments of songs that were expanded on, and many of them are pieced together from many takes. And that's just the studio stuff. I mean, this stack here, this is all the live recordings. And Eddie Kramer went back through every single tape of a live recording and made them sound great. In fact, one of Eddie's greatest achievements is the Band of Gypsies on New Year's Eve at the Fillmore East. And I was lucky enough to be working on the stage crew there and saw all the rehearsals and saw Jimmy on New Year's Eve and got to have a little bit, I didn't talk to Jimmy a lot, but I got to know him a little bit, and I got to know Eddie Kramer a little bit. And years later in Toronto, about 5 years ago, I ran into Eddie, and he was working on this, which he recommended. We recognized each other. This is Jimmy at the Atlanta Rock Festival. There's just tons and tons of Jimi Hendrix music out there. This, if you can find it, is really a definitive box set. It's got the very, very best of his live recordings. And one of the things that people think that Hendrix just played loud psychedelic music. There's some beautiful soft guitar playing. There's a live version of Little Wing on this, as well as the best of his studio stuff. And over the years, there's the vinyl, and there's different box sets of live recordings. And I was in a record store in the West Village about 10 or 15 years ago, buying bootlegs, and I heard that music from that concert that I had worked at, the New Year's Eve concert from the Fillmore East playing. And I looked up, and on one of the TV monitors was the concert. I mean, has that ever happened to you? It certainly has never happened to me. So I go up to the front desk and I say, is this Jimi Hendrix New Year's Eve at the Fillmore East, the Late Show? It kind of spooked the guy behind the counter. He goes, yeah. And I said, where did you get this tape? I mean, where did you get this concert? He had a bootleg. So this is the recording. This is the backstory of this was, piecing it together, is there was a fantastic photographer at the Fillmore East named Amelie Rothschild. And Amelie took pictures of everything. And she got a hold of one of the first videotape recorders, a smaller one, and she set it up in the balcony and filmed the entire Late Show of Jimi Hendrix. Now, what's great about that is that there is no camera movement. The camera just zooms in and zooms out, so you can't take your eyes off of Jimmy. There's no other coverage. Eventually, it was put out as a regular release. This is it here. This is it in VHS, and of course, being a Hendrix fanatic, I had to have it in DVD. Now, there's a documentary here where they interrupt him all the time while he's playing, and they talk, but there's also the complete concert. So you say to yourself, how can one sit there and look at one 90-minute shot of Jimi Hendrix playing? Well, its limitations are its strengths, because there's nothing to distract you from the amount of sounds and the amount of improvisation that he got on that particular night. That band only lasted a weekend, and it has a recording of it, of a song called Machine Gun. And Machine Gun's not a song. Machine Gun's really the experience of Vietnam, because Jimmy had been in the Navy. So if you're a Hendrix fan, you know, this is a great thing to have, but you have to be a real fan. Now, how about all this? This is just all the live videos of Hendrix that they found and documentaries. And one of them, this is the the Monterey Pop Festival. This had been also in the summer of '67. This was in June. And what this is the Mamas and the Papas and people in the LA music scene had decided that why don't we show off our music to the world? Because previously it had been on Ed Sullivan and commercial TV, and let's have the inmates take over the asylum. I know they didn't quite put it that way, so they invited all the bands that they knew from LA, the Association. They also took all the San Francisco bands, the Jefferson Airplane, the Grateful Dead, and Simon and Garfunkel, and Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones was on the board, and it was just packed. And they brought over from England the Who, and they also brought over from England a new band, the Jimi Hendrix Experience. This is the first time that Jimi had played in America. Also on this show, and he basically stole the show, was Otis Redding. And Otis Redding's set and Jimmy's set in this box set are complete, as well as all the rehearsals and the movie, the terrific documentaries. The interesting thing about Jimmy's performance on this particular night, you'd think that he would be nervous. I mean, here he is. His whole career is on the line here. He's playing for the rock royalty right from the beginning. But he appears really relaxed on stage. And this one little detail always gets me. And I know you can dismiss me as a maniac for noticing this, but he's chewing gum. The fact that he's singing like a Rolling Stone, chewing gum, and then during Wild Thing, he sets his guitar on fire, and he basically, he fucks the amplifier and then kind of gets over the burning guitar like it's some kind of religious rite. It's the kind of thing that your mom warned you about, you know, all that rock and roll and drugs and so forth. But the hit of that particular festival, the only artist who was asked to play twice was Janis Joplin with Big Brother and the Holding Company. Now, it was such a huge sensation that she was signed to Columbia Records on the spot. And a little record label that recorded a bunch of demos with her immediately seized on this and released this over that summer. It's got some good songs on it. It's very poorly produced, and it doesn't begin to capture the genius of this. And the thing about Big Brother and the Holding Company is they were kind of not very good musicians. They had trouble staying in time and in tune, but there's an energy to it. There is a cohesion to it that really feels like punk rock. That's all I can say. It sounds like late 70s punk rock when you divorce it from the context of the Summer of Love. They are wailing. Now, there was a band that really stretched the limitations of what was rock music. They were not interested in love songs. They were not interested in songs that appealed to youth. They wanted to make adult music. And the man who wrote those songs wanted to make music that told stories like Last Exit to Brooklyn or William Burroughs, harshly realistic stories. And his name is Lou Reed, and the album, Lou Reed, and well, this is the Velvet Underground with Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol sponsored this, and he designed the cover. And this is actually one of the most valuable records I have because I didn't peel the banana. Everyone peels the banana. So here they are, Lou Reed, John Cale, together in one band, you know, Maureen Tucker on drums. And right here, that person there, that's doing this whip dance, that's Miss Togar. That's Mary Warrenoff. Mary was involved with the whole Andy Warhol scene and toured with the Velvet Underground doing a whip dance. How many of you know anyone who was a whip dancer? I love Mary, and I love this record, and Lou Reed has played a big part in my life, in my creative life. I even worked with him on Get Crazy. Here I am with Lou Reed when I was directing Get Crazy, and there are more stories in the future about me and Lou Reed. Now, earlier at Franklin and Marshall, when I was at the radio station, I discovered an album that became a gigantic hit across the country. In fact, the single from it, Light My Fire, was in the top 10. And it was The Doors. And this is the first Doors album. Now, this is pretty early in the rock cycle. Most of these bands have only put out one record. And of course, we were looking forward to the next Doors record. And there's an expression in the music business is that you have 25 years to create your first record, to get the songs down, develop a personality, learn how to play, and you have 6 months to do the second. And this is the second Doors album. And it was a bit of a lesson for me because, it's just not as good as the first one. And I was in denial about this. I just really refused to let go that this was not a great record. And I played it over and over again. And, some of it is good, but some of it does not wear well. But nonetheless, me and my friends were really excited because the Doors were going out on tour. And they were going to be playing in New York City at a little club in the West 44th Street called The Scene. Now, we had been to The Scene to see the Young Rascals. Good lovin', that band. And it's a small club with a very hip clientele and an intense room. And the Rascals were great. So imagine, what it was going to be like with the Doors. And also people who had played there was a Moby Gregor played there and a group called The Seeds. And the reason I bring The Seeds to your attention is they did a song called Pushin' Too Hard, which is a sort of a garage rock song. And it's Johnny Ramone's favorite rock song. So we get to the club. We're going to get there early on this evening, and we have dinner, which was a hot dog on the street. And we are so uncool. We have no idea what we're doing. We're 19 years old, and it's an 8 o'clock show, and we get to this club at 6:30. There's nobody there. There's no line. So we pay our money, we walk in, and they're not going to seat us at a table. I mean, we're kids. We can't order liquor. So where did they put us? On the floor. We're sitting on the hard floor, but where we were sitting is this. We were sitting right in front of Jim Morrison's microphone. If the microphone stand was here, we were looking up at Jim Morrison. How about that? And the rest of the Doors were right beyond us. How cool was that? We were really excited. And, the show was supposed to start at 8, and we couldn't wait to see the Doors. But in our naivete, we did not notice that the little stage was not set up for the Doors. It was set up for an R&B band with horns. And at 8 o'clock, a rhythm and blues band came out that looked nothing like the Doors, all Southern men, and with a leader who had a conch and had a look about him of "don't fuck with me." And on a countdown, this band went into an instrumental. It was the tightest music I'd ever heard. I'd never heard a band, I'd never seen that kind of band play, where every turn is on the one. They were fantastic, and they were all looking at that leader. And every single head cue he gave him between his screaming guitars, the band took it. And as the music really built, this guy was clearly in control because this was Ike Turner. And when I was about to find out in a few seconds that the room was about to explode with music, about to explode with women. That's right. Out came Tina Turner and the Ikeettes. And this is what they looked like on that day. And this is how they behaved. Imagine you're sitting on the floor. You're 19 years old. All this is going on. I had never seen women behave like this before. You remember the angle I'm looking up at? These skirts are flying. They're in formation. They are tearing it up with rhythm and blues music like I've never heard before, and cover versions of songs. And the chemistry between Ike and Tina was so palpable. Now, we all know what was going on behind the scenes. But for this 19-year-old guy whose hormones were off the chart, this was like an introduction that I never forgot. And I went out and I decided I was going to buy every record that they had. This really sums it up, okay? Ike surrounded by worshipful women. That was the impression you got watching him. And so I went out and I bought this record. Now, over the years, I came to the Fillmore East, and I actually had a couple of interactions with him that are exciting, so to speak, knowing the kind of personality and the drugs that I was taking. And we'll get to those in later chapters. But remember I was talking about the Jimi Hendrix Unfortunate record cover? How about this? This is in 1970 after they did Proud Mary, and Ike had a lot of cachet. He had control over his album cover. All right? They don't make records like this anymore. Oops, this is falling over. All right. It's a good record. The cover is, well, ridiculous. So the fun part was coming together. But the other part, the other assignment for that summer was going to be getting an apartment. And at that, Jeff and I were failing. See, we would read the New York Times on Sunday and circle the ads and get together during the week and go looking for these apartments. We were schmucks. We didn't know shit. You know, we would get there and all the apartments were taken, and we didn't have a real estate agent. We couldn't afford it because we had a limited budget that what we were going to get. But our goal was to get an apartment. We'd share the rent, and the rent we wanted to pay was $175. Yeah, you heard me right. I said $175. Really, we wanted to spend $150, okay? Remember, this is the summer of 1967. And in comparison, here's the other choices if we had decided to go with this. Now, NYU at that time was a commuter school. And it's not the school it is now. It's not this behemoth that owns all the real estate in the East and West Village and has 10 dorms. It only had 3 dorms. And one dorm, if we could have gotten into it, was the Weinstein dorm. Now, what was special about the Weinstein dorm? It was co-ed. That's right. Boys and girls together in one dormitory in Greenwich Village on University Place. Unheard of. But that's what this was, except the Weinstein on the inside looked like a cross between an Olympic Village and a minimum security prison. This is the inside of one of the rooms. This is an actual photo from that era of a Weinstein co-ed. She's got her hair, she's getting her hair done, she's smoking a cigarette, she's studying, and notice the walls are all this white concrete. That's what every room looked like. So it was full, and we didn't really want to stay there. So the other choice, which we actually couldn't go to, is the Rubin. The Rubin was an all-women's dormitory on 5th Avenue and 11th Street. It was kind of modeled on a famous women's hotel called the Barbizon uptown, where models and actresses could live in, and you could rent a room, and it was kind of a safe environment. And this place was really nice, and you picked up your date, and you brought them back, and you were allowed in the rooms till 10:30 at night, where they would ring a bell, and they'd get all the guys out. So this was out of the question. So if there's a women's dorm, that meant that there was a men's dorm. And here it is, the infamous Brittany dorm. This was, I think, on 11th Street, about University Place. Now, how to describe the Brittany? The Brittany was like, well, it was like a summer of love, psychedelic Casbah, okay? When you went up to the different rooms, it was always kind of dark because a lot of the glow lights, you know, the purple ultraviolet lights or red light bulbs were on, and all the doors were open, and you could look into each room as you walked by, and music would be blaring out of all the stereos, and there would be incense burning. It was also a really, really good place to buy pot, or in one instance for myself, mescaline. It was like an open bazaar, which brought on this other aspect to the Whitney. Because everyone was smoking so much pot, they were very paranoid. And about every third day, there was a panic that the police were going to come and bust them, or worse, the FBI. Okay. And by the way, the FBI had infiltrated NYU because we were such anti-war group and marchers and stuff, and they all stood up. But anyway, there was no room at the inn here, okay? And even if there had been, I was pretty serious about wanting to be a film student. There was no way, with all this influence going on there, that I was going to get any homework done. So the apartment thing was what we had to do, and it's then that Jeff and I made this discovery. We started using the Village Voice to find apartments, and we'd get the Voice on Thursday when it came out. And we were smart. We'd buy the Voice and go looking, and we had no luck. And now it's down to like 3 weeks to go before school. And we got to get an apartment and move in and clean it up and everything. It's then that we found out the secret, which is although the Village Voice comes out on Thursday morning, it's printed Wednesday night. And all the real people who know about this go to the printing plant at about midnight when the copies of the Voice come out and get them there. Go through it, decide where they're going to be, and are at the first apartment that they want at 6:30, 7 in the morning. That's how you beat everybody. So we did this. And we get there, and we're at this apartment, and you know, it's like a 6th-floor walk-up. The rooms are small, they're ugly, and it's way overpriced. The bad part, so it's a no, but the bad part is that we had wasted an hour there. So now we run to the next place, and it's perfect, but we were late. We weren't going to get it. So now there's a third place. It's not far from NYU, which is the good. The bad is, well, it's in the sketchiest part of the East Village. It's on 2nd Avenue and 10th Street. And the East Village at that time was not like the West Village with its history of beatniks and its history of left-wing events and stuff, and also a destination for tourists, and it had clubs and nice restaurants. The East Village was a, well, like a Middle European neighborhood in the sense that there were a lot of Polish people and a lot of pierogi being eaten and so forth. But the majority of it was kind of desolate, and it was inhabited by broke beatniks and certainly broke hippies, and it's where the Hells Angels had their headquarters. And if you walked east and you got to Avenue A, from Avenue A to Avenue D was, you just, at night, you certainly never went there in Tompkins Square Park, and in the daytime, it was total junkies, okay? And so we went on 2nd Avenue, and we headed down 10th Street, and this is the building we were heading towards, okay? Now, this is a recent picture. It looks pretty nice. What was kind of remarkable on this particular day was that parked in front of this building, okay, were 3 police cars and an ambulance. And as we approached, we could hear this woman screaming. So we get to the building, and this is the front stoop. Of course, it's much nicer now. Now, the front stoop has got blood on it, a lot of blood. And this woman is screaming at a guy who's being put into handcuffs, and his shirt is splattered in blood. And another guy is being put on a gurney to be taken to the hospital, and they're trying to stop the bleeding on him. So what had happened is that she was married to the super of the building, okay? And the super had stabbed her brother over money, probably some kind of heroin deal, all right? And that was the drama that was unfolding. And as you looked around, past all the cop cars, you see all these people running around the corner with their Village Voice, stopping dead in their tracks and going away. So standing near the store, though, there was this one guy who didn't look like a resident. He looked like the manager of the building. So Jeff and I looked at each other, and with 3 weeks to go, I mean, what the fuck? So we went up to the guy and we said, "Is that apartment still available?" And he looked at us a little incredulous, you know, considering this was, what do you call that, curb appeal in real estate? And he said, "Yeah." He says, "Can we see it?" He goes, "Sure, but the elevator is turned off, so I'll have to take the stairs." Now, we walked up 4 flights on these stairs, which again, had to step around the blood, to this one apartment, okay, which was on the 4th floor in the corner. Now, one side of the apartment, let me see if I can spot it for you here, was there, okay? So you had a view of 2nd Avenue on one side. Now, the other side of the apartment, well, that had a view of uptown and this park. And 2 of the 3 rooms had a lot of sunlight. One bedroom didn't. There was a kitchen and there was a tiny bathroom. And we're right across the street from the famous St. Mark's Church. Here's St. Mark's Church. Now, St. Mark's Church is one of the oldest churches in New York City. Uh, it was built around Revolutionary War times out of wood, and then at a certain point it was torn down because a neighborhood had grown up around it. It was in the middle of what was kind of hunting farmland, and then as the East Village got more and more famous and so forth, and the East Village was the home of Yiddish theater before it became junkie land. That was there, and they had a lot of poetry readings. And 8 years later, Patti Smith did her revolutionary poetry reading here, which started her on her music career. So we're in this apartment and we're looking around and we say, we'll take, how much is it? And he says, $150. In the shortest amount of time you can measure in the universe, we say, we'll take it. We'll take it. We'll take it. 150, we'll take it. And he looks at us and says, you have to give me checks today, the latest, like late tonight, and I want you to sign off and get your parents' signature. And you guys are NYU students. I want 2 checks from you and 2 checks from you. He basically wanted 4 months' rent, 3 months' rent, and whatever that fee is. And we'll take it, we'll take it. So now we dash down the stairs, stepping around the blood, and I'm going to call my father. And so I run across the street, and there's a phone booth. And I actually have here the angle of the phone booth. I'm on this corner. The building is over there, and they still got the cop cars out there, and the ambulance and stuff is about to pull away. So I call my father on the phone at work because he's up at 31st Street, and I can get to him really quickly, and he's not there because it's lunchtime. So I call my mother. Here's how my mother answers the phone. What's wrong? Is anything wrong? That's kind of the way she answers the phone all the time. So I said, wrong, Mom. I found an apartment. You found an apartment? I said, yes. And it's $150. And when I split that with Jeff, it's $75 a piece. And we know someone else, so it may be $50 a piece. And we each get our own room. And it's beautiful. And she says, really? Is it in a nice neighborhood? I said, it's where all the Europeans live here. Right? Really? It's really nice. Mom, there's a church right across the street. When you come visit me, I'll take you to it. It's like the oldest church in New York, right? It's all going well. But because I'm lying, well, stretching the truth, I kind of turned my back on the building so I don't really have to look at it. And so she says to me, is it a safe neighborhood? Cop cars pulling away, And I said, Mom, it's really safe. Just looking around, there's police everywhere. And so that seems to make her feel calm because she says, I'll give you the checks. So I now am a denizen of the East Village. I am a block and a half from where NYU film school classes were, where you showed movies. I'm 2 blocks from the theater school, and I'm walk across town to the main part of the school. And in future years, I'm 4 blocks from my second home away from home, the Fillmore East. Everything had come together. Here I am in recent years pointing to that wonderful apartment at 159 2nd Avenue, okay? Now, there's a lot to tell about what went on in this building. Some of it hard to believe. Okay, so I'm pointing to my room. Above us lived the ubiquitous marijuana dealers of the East Village. Now, above them over here, remember in the last episode I told you about the beatniks, hippies, and then there was the yippies, the agitprop people? Well, in that building was a group that had a much different political stance. They had a cute name, too. They were called the Motherfuckers. And the Motherfuckers had a political stance which was everything should be free. They actually had a free store. And one of the people who lived in the apartment with the Motherfuckers was Abby Hoffman, who was sleeping with one of the Motherfuckettes, or whatever they were called, and also Bernadine Dorn. Now, Bernadine Dorn had blown up a draft board and now was on the lam. So it was an exciting building. So young Mr. Arkish is really excited, and the first day or two we move in, I go down to the local bodega to get some sodas and stuff, and who is shopping in the bodega but my idol, Allen Ginsberg, because I lived on 2nd Avenue and 10th Street. He lives on 10th Street and Avenue A. So things are looking up, huh? So we'll talk about the neighborhood next and the adventures of 159 2nd Avenue. See you then. Good times.